So I remember Professor Dolan, my History 101 professor, who at 70 years old and white hair, puffing out of his head and puffing out of his ears, and an Irish red face, red nose. Even when he wasn't drinking, he had a red nose. He'd come into class. He'd have a little TA following with some maps, and he would berate us in this kind of friendly, curmudgeonly Irish way. One time he put a Greek word on the board. I think it was the Greek word polis when we were studying the Greek city-state. He said, "Anybody know what that word means?" "No, you don't, do you? Because you can't read Greek. In fact, some of you have studied language, but you can't even speak it." "Oh, yeah, you studied Spanish, did you? But can you speak it? And you certainly don't know any Greek." "Well, let me tell you what that is." He'd throw chalk across the room and so on. And when he put that word on the board, I said, I'm going to learn that. I'm going to learn that language. I'm going to learn Greek. And I remember Professor Dolan. Some of you are educators because of someone like that in your life, a person. Well, I've got to move on a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about Schole in reference to wonder. In his book, Joseph Pieper, Leisure, the Basis of Culture by Joseph Pieper, he says there's kind of two communities in education in our culture, Western culture. One he calls the bonum utile, which means the useful good. What is the useful good that we all need to pursue to have a meaningful experience in civilization? And then the bonum commune, the common good or the communal good. And he says both are necessary, both are important. We have to make our way around the world, the bonum utile, but we have neglected the bonum commune, the common good that comes from a life of contemplation and wonder, reflection and conversation and rest. And we have kind of shrunk that Schole life and emphasized the useful practical life until the practical life and practical affairs of our lives so dominates that we have a big circle of our practical everyday life in the total world of our work and a very small little sphere for Schole. And we're out of balance. And we're in danger of the one swallowing the other. And he says even when we try to incorporate into our practical busy lives some Schole like in religion and the way we pursue love and romance and art and music, we can even distort that and turn it into practically serving functionary kinds of practices so that our prayers become like merely civic prayers. And funerals become aseptic things where we never really talk about death and never really want to reflect on death that someone has died. We're just not ready for that kind of disturbance that might take us to another level of contemplation. And the same thing with music and poetry. He says that's a concern, and it is a concern. Our Facebook culture, our iTunes culture, our internet culture, we have highly distracted students who with disordered passions, who don't know how to love that which is lovely, who can only say about their favorite band, "I like it, they're cool." "Well, why?" "I just like it." "Oh, do you have anything else to say?" "Why is it good?" "Oh, you've got a good beat." You can take even modern music and get students to contemplate it. They'll go deeper, and they'll be changed and humanized by it. But we just think on the surface of everything. We don't know why we don't like something. We don't know why we do. So, to conclude, I want to just do a little comparison, and it will be dissatisfying and too quick, but my goal is just to provoke you to read this book and have additional discussion, okay? So the bonum utile, the active practical life, and the bonum commune, that life that involves leisure, contemplation, Schole. On the one side, okay, this left hand is going to represent the practical frenetic life. This side will represent Schole. On this side, the practical utilitarian life, we have work, contrasted with leisure and freedom, rest and contemplation. On this side, we have training, career training, job training. Now, I'm not saying that any of these things on the side are bad. I'm just saying this is dominating everything over here. Career training. On this side over here, we have education. Education used in that bigger sense of the unfolding of a human soul, the cultivation of a soul over time. Over here we have power. Francis Bacon said, knowledge is power in the 1500s. And we've adopted that kind of thinking. We want knowledge so that we can have power, so that we can go manipulate our lives, manipulate the world, which is a kind of raw material that we work with to get something that we want. On this other side, we have wonder that leads to joy and celebration. The practical life focuses on means. Schole life says this is an end in itself. It's an end in itself to ask the deep questions and to contemplate truth, goodness, and beauty. This is a part of why you exist. And it's a part of fulfilling your own humanity, to come into contact with these things and to roll them over and to talk about them and to breathe them in and swim in these things. This is a part of, this is an end. It's not a means to anything else. Ratio over here. That receptive gazing and receiving, intellectus over here. The head over here. What C.S. Lewis calls the chest. Your gut, your affections over here. That which is useful over here. That which is blessed over here. We want to be useful. Sure, we want to be able to earn a living. We want to be able to do things in this world. That's all great. But don't we want to be blessed as well? You choose someone to marry, is it always just for economic reasons? He's gonna do well. If you're gonna marry rich. Or do you choose someone because you're gonna be blessed in their presence? The world is raw materials to be crafted. Over here, the world is a creation that reflects the Creator to be enjoyed, like walking in a garden. Over here, we have people who are viewed as functionaries, a job to be done. Over here, we have people who are creators, who are making things, making relationships, making beauty. Here we have workers. Here we have lovers. In this realm, everything seems to be self-explanatory, self-contained. Over here, we're seeing something, we are transcending that world and going beyond it and seeing that what was seems obvious and familiar here actually betrays the fact that there are other levels of reality that are very important and other ways of knowing over here. The soul tends to be diminished here. It tends to be charged here and refreshed. This is necessary. This is good too. We have to live practically in the world. This is sufficient though. And you need both. You can't have contemplation without also having a practical life that makes sense. And then finally, if you only live here, it becomes monotonous and dull because there's nothing transcendent about it. You're only living under the dome, under the sun. You're never breaking through the clouds. But over here, you do break through and you do transcend. And so instead of the temptation to monotony, there's always here the call to adventure. I'm going to conclude with just saying a few words about what to do. Why is it so hard? Well, it's hard for us because we're in the 21st century, and our century is more like a carnival than a monastery. And we are drawn to amusement more than we're drawn to music. Amusia, the Greek word, means to be without the muses, without inspiration. So Neil Postman says we amuse ourselves to death. We lack models. We do. We lack models. Where do you find people who can live a life, a contemplative life? How do you do it in the 21st century? So we lack models. So I'm not here to beat you up. If you're starting to feel like that's the case, I'm just here to observe that we all struggle in this way, and we need to start thinking about doing something about it. We lack, or we think we lack, opportunity. We don't think we can do this. It just doesn't seem possible, because you are an automatic pilot, just like me. You let your day will happen to you. If you're going to slow down, you're going to have to become active in order to be passive. And it's because we were educated in and to distraction. That's why it's hard. So how do we know it? We know it by studying it. It's a long tradition. I also recommend a book, I don't have it with me, but it's called The Intellectual Life by a French writer named Sertalange. It's a powerful book. Can't say more about it because of time. See that time thing? There we go. I'm just living the same thing. We don't have time. I also recommend The Prodigal Son by Henri Nouwen. He describes how he goes to a Russian monastery and spends 3 days looking at this painting by Rembrandt called The Prodigal Son and how it changes his life. Joy. C.S. Lewis says that joy is a divine longing greater than any human satisfaction. A divine longing greater than any human satisfaction. When you're in the presence of true beauty and goodness and truth, it hurts. That's strange. That's joy. Because we were made to experience truth, goodness, and beauty. We were made to be one with it. We long to, and yet we can't. And hence the longing. We know that something else is needed. But when you're feeling that longing, you're probably in the presence of something really important. That's joy. You know it by doing it. A part of your humanity. It's a part of your humanity, the Schole side, and you may not have exercised it for a good while, but it's still there, and you were made to exercise your souls to register the beauty and goodness and truth in this world. Your soul is made to receive it according to the tradition, and you will be humanized. You'll become the best version of yourself when you are doing so. You do have a history of contemplation. You can look back to those moments when things have happened, when you have found yourself outside of time and space in a state of contemplation. Can you get back to that? How do you get back to that? How do you repeat it? How do you get more of that stuff? Start in small doses. Think about your place. Think about decor. Think about time. Think about friendship. Find some people and commit to doing this together. There's some groups of women across the country who've started to gather, and they're calling themselves Schole Sisters. And, they're getting together to do this. These are homeschooling moms, by the way. Really busy homeschooling moms. They're saying, you know what, I have to keep playing the violin. Because I've spoken to some of these women, and they give up everything to teach their kids. And I say, you can't do that. You have to model your own love. Your own loves have to be present for these kids. And the same thing is true of the teacher. So if you are a teacher and you play the guitar, why isn't the guitar on a stand in your classroom? I know of a 4th grade teacher. He's trained clarinetist and bassoonist. But he has 3 of these instruments in his 4th grade class, and he plays them from time to time. I know of another teacher. He's really a semi-professional guitarist. His guitar is always there. Guess how many kids at this school have started playing the guitar? Guess how often we find that the guitar has a relationship to almost anything he teaches. He teaches Spanish. So in conclusion, find a friend and commit to doing this together. Christ encounters Mary and Martha. He's having dinner at Martha and Mary's house. They're sisters. Martha is cleaning up after dinner. She's getting annoyed because Mary is sitting with Jesus Christ and having a great conversation. And she gets frustrated, and she says to Christ, would you please tell Mary to help me with the dishes and the cleanup? And Christ says to her very interestingly, Martha, Martha, you have been busy and you're anxious about many things. But Mary has chosen the better thing, and what she's chosen will not be taken from her. Let me stop there. Let's take a 5-minute break, go to the bathroom, get something to drink, and then we're going to come back for Q&A. So it'd be a good time maybe to just write down some of your questions, and we'll take about 15 minutes and have some discussion.